We're good to go.
Hybrid meeting, the board members, staff, guests, and members of the public are reminded that the full authority board meeting is being recorded and will be posted on authority's website along with the official written minutes. As such, comments and opinions expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual board members, guests, and the general public are their own and do not represent the opinions or comments of the full authority board of directors. Recorded video of the full authority meeting is not considered the official record of that meeting. The official record of the full authority meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by the full authority. Are there any declarations of, I guess we need a roll call first.
We do. Baldwin Sands,
Yes.
Burrs,
Yes.
Jim Herbert is absent. Jones,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Cribble is absent. Noble,
Yes.
Trousseau,
Yes.
and John Wilson is currently absent, but we do have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Any good declarations of pecuniary interest? If not, we're going to jump ahead to a report from regarding the Dalewood Dam, and we have JD Valley here in attendance. And do you have any comments to begin with?
Can you just introduce the speaker, Jen?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Ryan Elliott, our engineering consultant from GD Valley. He's worked on the Dalewood Dam options report for us. He's very familiar with the dam, and we've been working with GD Valley for a couple of years now. Yes, I'd like to introduce Ryan. Ryan, thank you for joining us today.
Welcome, Ryan. Can you go ahead with your report? Are you ready?
I sure can. I'm just going to share my screen. If the host, if you're able to enable screen sharing.
You should be
Okay.
able to now.
Okay. 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 I'm basically just going to run through the report in a sort of a brief format and allow you guys lots of time to answer questions. So as Jennifer mentioned, we've been taking a look at the dam on behalf of the Conservation Authority for a year or two now. My name is Ryan Elliott. I'm the head of structural engineering here at GD Valley. We have a solid team of people that have done this sort of thing. But I'll get right into the next slides if I can find out how we're going here. Okay. You have to bear with me here. That's going a little slow this morning. Okay. Here are just some recent photographs of the dam and its location. Obviously, everyone is quite familiar with it and the condition, and that has been the subject of some discussion for quite some time. In terms of the background information, Jennifer was able to provide a lot of documentation. We had some record drawings that go back to the 20s and 50s, as well as some other studies that were done in the late 80s and 90s. And more recently, inspection reports done 2010, 2018, and of course, the hazard potential classification and the geotechnical work done by GHD in 2020 and 21. And then we've been taking a look at it since 22 in terms of monitoring its condition and making recommendations for work. So in the process of looking at what options are available, we have structured this report much in the same way that we would structure an environmental assessment report in terms of what options we look at. And of course, it seems sort of silly at times, but do nothing is always the first option that we look at, because in some cases it is viable. But we looked at doing nothing. We looked at repairing the dam. We looked at minor rehabilitation and major rehabilitation. We looked at replacing it with a like-for-like structure in terms of basically pulling out what's there and replacing it with exactly the same thing. And we also looked at replacing it with something that has a reduced capacity. So in essence, an earth dam with an overflow weir. And the last option we looked at was removing the dam and taking it out of service and restoring the watershed to a stream watershed. So in terms of the decision process, the real question that needs to be answered is, what is the long-term vision for the site, for the dam, for the reservoir? Step one is the wish to keep the dam in the reservoir, or is the wish to remove it? If the decision is to remove it, then it really simplifies the decision-making process. But if it's to remain, there are lots of options to look at. So if it's going to remain, we have to look at options for rehabilitation or replacement. And in terms of rehabilitation and replacement, they have multiple options within themselves. So for rehabilitation, there is a very minor repair option, which is low cost, low lifespan. There's a minor rehabilitation option, which is a higher cost with a moderately better lifespan. And there's a major rehabilitation, which comes at a much higher cost, but a longer lifespan. Those options pale in comparison to the lifespan of a replacement option. If we look at the decision-making process, what we're showing here is that these green circles are sort of where we need to make the decision, and the blue circles are the decisions being made. So when we look at a cost-benefit analysis for this site, we're considering the environment in many forms. We're not only looking at the natural physical habitat and environment, but we're also looking at the social, cultural environment, the economic environment, all of these types of environments. So if we determine that the cost is much greater than the benefit, then the decision can be quite simple in that if the cost outweighs the benefit significantly, then we should remove the dam. And if we do that, of course, we need a permit. It would require a Schedule B environmental assessment process under the municipal class environmental assessment process. The lifespan of removing the dam obviously would be permanent. And we've looked at the cost of what it would take to do this work would be in the range of about $1.3 million. So if we look on the other side of the decision process, where the benefit of maintaining the dam and the reservoir outweighs the cost, then obviously we would want to keep the dam. And in doing that, we need to decide whether we're going to repair what's there, or are we going to replace what's there. So if we look first at dam restoration, there's a repair option, which is a lower cost, but it's a very short term. It's basically band-aiding the deterioration we're seeing, but it would have to be band-aided on an ongoing basis. So a current repair would cost, in terms of its immediate urgent need, would cost around $300,000, but we would have to revisit it in less than 5 years. And keep doing that process over and over again. A minor rehab would increase the amount of work to roughly $900,000, but that lifespan would give us about 10 years before we have to start coming back and doing more repairs. And of course, a major rehabilitation would be around $1.4 million, but then the lifespan would be further increased to about 25 years. In terms of reinforced concrete and steel structures, the most similar types of structures to these dams are road bridges that you see and use every day. And the typical reinforced concrete bridge on the road has a target lifespan of 75 years in terms of the bridge code. And we would target doing a minor rehabilitation at year 25 of its life and a major rehabilitation at year 50 of its life. And then at year 75, we determine if we can get another round of 25 years with a major rehab, or do we replace it? So that's sort of the same idea with a major or a minor rehab for the dam, is that we could spend a certain amount of money and buy additional life with the knowledge that we're kicking the can down the road and we'll have to revisit it in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. So moving over to the other option of dam replacement, a like for like replacement. In terms of the municipal class environmental assessment, it could potentially be exempt if the dam has the exact same capacity and use as the current dam. But it's my understanding that the storm overflow would require some modifications. So it would be very likely that if we replaced it, we'd want to address that concern. So you'd be into a Schedule B process, which essentially is the case for all of these options. We would need to do a Schedule B process, and I'll talk a little bit about that so that you have your questions answered about that. But to replace it like for like, it would give you a brand new dam. So it would have a target lifespan of 75 years, which would, very likely with good care would be much longer than that. But it would come at a very large cost of over $4 million. So considering that, are there ways to replace the dam to maintain the aesthetic of the reservoir and the environmental aspect of the reservoir with something that's less expensive? And there is, but it comes at a compromise of doing a lower capacity earth dam with a reinforced weir for overflow. So something along those lines, you would have a reduced water elevation in your reservoir to whichever elevation you choose to set the new dam at with the overflow weir. That would also be a Schedule B process. It would again be a 75-year target lifespan, likely longer in good care. But the cost is roughly half of the like-for-like replacement. So if I go back to our original list, what we need to do is break or boil down this list into options that are truly viable. So if we take a look at the first option of do nothing, to do nothing would not be considered a reasonable decision to make, because we're really just waiting for something to happen, and then we would have, we would be, what I call firefighting with the structure. We'd have to spend a lot of money in short term on just keeping it safe. So to do something in terms of doing nothing, it's a very short lifespan and introduces a lot of risk. So we can easily take that one off as not being recommended. So then we're left with repairing the structure, which in terms of keeping it operational, it works in the short term, and it is less expensive than the other options. However, in terms of the lifespan you get for the number of years you're going to be buying, it's very expensive, because you end up having to do these short-term repairs, which are expensive every few years. So to say that the repair option can be taken off the list is reasonable, because it's a very expensive way to look at it that gives it a very short lifespan, and we're spending money over and over again every few years. So then looking at a minor rehabilitation versus a major rehabilitation, obviously rehabilitation is a viable solution, but if we're going to choose one, which would we choose? So the minor rehabilitation, we're spending some money and we're gaining some life. If we do a major rehabilitation, we're getting, for a little bit more money, a lot more life. So if we're going to go the rehabilitation route, for the little extra money, the much increased lifespan, that leaves the minor rehabilitation to be less palatable than the major rehabilitation. So then if we look at what we have left, the last things we've got left are replacements and removal. Well, if we look at the replacements, The $4 million cost of replacing a like for like pretty much rules this one out, unless there's a major source of funding that you can find. But $4 million price tag is pretty hefty when we consider that it could be replaced with a reduced capacity in terms of an earth dam for roughly half that cost. And then, of course, we have the last option, which would be to remove the dam, which in terms of different camps, people don't like change. So the people that are utilizing the reservoir and the dam itself and the way that things have been there for a century, they would prefer not to remove the dam. However, there are options for removing the dam where the watershed can be restored to a stream, which has been done in other areas as well. So we have these three last options, which seem to be reasonable and viable. And we go back to our decision-making process, and really what we need to understand is what as the owner and operator of this dam do you want to do? Do you want to keep the dam, or do you want to get rid of the dam? Once you understand that, then it simplifies things. But in terms of what we have for viable options here, we've got a major rehab, which is going to buy you about a 25-year lifespan with good operation and maintenance, which will cost somewhere between $1 to $2 million. A replacement with a reduced capacity, which would be somewhere between 1.3 to 2.8, so roughly around $1.9 million, which would have a 75-year lifespan. And then, of course, the removal, which would be, again, similar cost, somewhere between $1 to $2 million, but it would be permanent. So really, it comes back to what do we want to do? Do we want to keep the dam or remove the dam? If we keep the dam, are we going to rehabilitate it or replace it? So those last alternative solutions are what we have to choose from. And in doing those, each one of them would trigger a Schedule BEA. Now, what that basically means is in the Environmental Assessment Act, we have a process that we follow. So you'll see for a Schedule B, which these projects would fall under, we go through phase one, which is where we identify the problem or opportunity, which is what we've essentially already done. And in phase two, we identify alternative solutions, which is essentially what we've already done. But at this time, we would notify the public and have mandatory consultation. And then from there, if there are no issues, then we can move right to implementation. And this is just a more detailed look at the process itself, where, in phase one, we could have discretionary public contact, we identify the problem. Then in phase two, we would collect all of the information, and then we would consult the public and the agencies and come up with a preferred solution and make a decision, which is essentially where we are now. And once you've made that decision, we would do a notice of completion, which gets published, and then you can go right to phase 5, which is implementation. So we are at this decision point. We've got a major rehab that'll give you a 75-year lifespan with good operation and maintenance for $1 to $2 million. You've got a dam replacement for a little bit more money, again, 75-year lifespan, or you've got a removal, which would be permanent for roughly the same costs. So that's the summary of the essence of the work we've done for an options report. And at this time, I'll open it up to any questions you might have. But I will caution that the sound that I'm receiving is a little bit garbled, so I may ask you to repeat yourself, but I'll do my very, very best to answer your questions.
Thanks, Ryan, for your report. Elizabeth and I feel that this is not a decision for today. We're going to do our inspection on Friday for those who are available. So we'll be bringing, this will just be received and filed for today, but any questions for Ryan right now? Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, Ryan, when you say, under dam replacement, reduced capacity, what does that mean? It means a smaller
So-
dam?
Yes, it means a dam that would have a lower elevation. So the water level in the reservoir would be reduced.
By how much?
That would be up to the designer. You could lower the dam a couple of feet, a couple of meters. That's really more of a second sort of phase. That would be something that you could, if you determine that that's the route you want to go, then that would become part of your public consultation and your consultation with other agencies like DFO, MECP, and so on.
All right, so what we're saying is if we want to do like for like, it's 4.2 mil. Reduced capacity 1.9 mil, which means you got to be cutting the dam substantially to get down to reduced capacity, correct? I'm just asking questions, that's all. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. Yeah, so essentially what you need to do is reduce the hydrostatic load on the back of the dam. So to do that, we would reduce the height of the dam, which would still allow the reservoir to exist, but would be, you'd have an overflow weir that allows the inflow design flood from the storm event to flow through without causing any problems. So in terms of the height of what that dam would be, that's a design question that would have to be answered with a much more thorough design.
Okay, I'll leave it there.
Sam, you have your hand up, go ahead.
Yes. And I know you can't answer this without doing the full environmental review, but all in all, what are the, generally, what would the environmental long-term erosion implications be under the options? I mean, I want to get a lot of input and I want to figure out how this is going to affect stakeholders, but I think first and foremost, our obligation is to the integrity of the watershed. So could you just sort of, do you have any preferences in terms of that, or is it too early to say?
It certainly is early, but I would suggest that erosion transport, sediment transport down the watershed is a concern for removal, but there are strategies that can be successfully implemented that would limit or significantly reduce that risk. Sedimentation silt traps can be utilized, but they would have to be maintained. This is a problem for all dam sites where removal is considered. Most of these dams in Ontario have essentially been functioning as sediment traps for a century, and this is an obvious one where the volume of the reservoir, which used to be a drinking water reservoir, has been depleted to the point through sedimentation behind it that the volume of water has been significantly reduced. So the removal option would require careful planning and construction and design to limit any sediment moving downstream. If you go with a rehabilitation or a replacement option, then your erosion and sediment transport would essentially be the same as it is today.
Are you familiar with the year-long, it's still ongoing, it's been going on for a long time, controversy in London?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, well, I think we could look at the Springbank Dam controversy, which has persisted over many years, as a good case study in how an agency should not proceed. There was just so much controversy. The stakeholders on the two sides of the issue became very solid in their opposition to each other. It was very divisive in the community. Basically, do we have a sense of who the stakeholders are that would become not happy with any of the options and how that's lining up? Because I think to the extent that we can figure that out ahead of time, it could help us avoid some of the well, that's my question.
Yeah, sure. Well, this particular topic is a controversial one all across the province. In my own hometown of Simcoe in Norfolk County, there was a dam that was removed by the local conservation authority under an emergency measure, and of course, sediment transport went downstream and had to be dredged out of a watershed within a park in the downtown area, and of course, everyone was upset. But results can be shown that the rehabilitation of the habitat of the area upstream of the former dam has been successful. On the other hand, another controversial dam project that I had some involvement in the town of Port Dover, it was extremely divisive for the community because there was solid camps that wanted to maintain the reservoir and maintain the dam for its history and its functional purpose as protecting the harbor from sediment. And then there were very strong supporters of the idea of removing the dam and restoring the habitat. So I don't think in terms of mitigating and managing that, you'll never get those two groups to see eye to eye. But I think being as open and transparent about this process is your best case scenario in terms of coming to a decision point. And that's where the EA process is very helpful because it's done in the open, all of the information is on the table, and everyone gets an opportunity to have their say.
Thank you.
Ryan, I guess Frank was asking about what the pond might look like if it was reduced to a smaller dam or a shorter dam. Is there any GIS or anything where you can actually show what that pond would look like? Or would it be just a mud flat? Or is there any, maybe Joe, this is a question for Joe, I don't know. I think Frank is worried about what it looks like after we reduce to an earthen dam.
Yeah, the follow-on to that is, it's been expressed, I hear that that's a significant aspect of the campground. And if you removed it or lowered it, what does it create? Then demand for the campground goes down. And I think, I gotta look at the employees here to address that. Unless you have a public meeting, I don't know if Conservation Authority would do that. Is that a true statement, what I said?
Yeah, Frank, through the chair, I'll let Ryan answer what he's gonna, then I have input as well.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Sure. So yeah, certainly the stakeholders that have adjacent property are obviously primary stakeholders to the decision here. And if you go down the Schedule B path to determine what would be the preferred solution, which is I think the logical way to go. Part of that process would be to look at the bathymetric data, which is to say basically the topo of the bottom of the reservoir, and look at what elevations, what options for elevations would look like in terms of how much water would remain and how much shorefront would be gained. And also with the understanding that if that was the preferred alternative and that's the route you go down, there is a period of time when the water does get drawn down where there are some unpleasant natural processes happening where the peat and the detritus is airing out. There's odors to contend with until things stabilize and renaturalize. But that would certainly be, I think, a consideration you'll have to go through when you go through the Schedule B process in talking with the stakeholders with adjacent property, because for certain, the campground, you know, if they rely on the water at a certain elevation, would be affected in terms of their cultural, social, and economic environment.
I would just add to that, staff have had similar questions about the replace with reduced capacity is what does the reservoir look like under those scenarios? And we understand that we can run maps at various levels to see how that looks in the reservoir. And then from a standpoint of both an adjacent landowner, because we own the campground adjacent to this, that would be, you know, a preferred option, that the reservoir still maintain some sort of capacity for the recreational aspects that the campground enjoys, but also the broader community has seen it as a focal point of some form of recreation.
Is there like significant, like, you know, Sam brought up, I was a member of the boat club and was against not maintaining the dam in London. To me, it's just destroyed the river. There's nothing left. But is it true that people kayak canoe on the lake, that it's used as a recreational thing, not only just to sit in your campground and look at the lake, but if that's the case, then I guess we have to talk about that. That's a driving factor. And then you get down to keep the dam or not. And you know, you go downstream, and the way I look at stuff is nothing's getting cheaper as you go through time. So a patch thing, probably you're wasting money, but then there's the financing. How do you finance it? So that's what I'm understanding now, is that this is a significant recreational piece. It isn't flood control, is it? Is it a flood control thing, or is that a lesser thing?
It's a lesser capacity in terms of flood control. It has some capacity in flood control, but through the chair to Frank, I think that's why we're saying this isn't a decision that we can make today. I want you to go down and look at the reservoir, look at the dam itself on Friday. And it is a discussion that we have to have with those broader stakeholders, specifically the city of St. Thomas, Central Elgin, those municipalities that are downstream, and take into account that the reservoir has, I think, always been a focal point of the community, but certainly I would say the last 5 or 6 years has increased in its draw for the community to come around there, whether it's fishing, kayaking, or simply just enjoyment of that view on the reservoir. So that's something that we definitely have to take into account. But just being cognizant of time, if there's any other questions specifically for Ryan on the report that he provided, I think this is something that will continue our discussion at both on Friday and next month.
Okay, so I guess I'd like a motion to receive a report from Amadeo Dam from GD Valley News. Secretary Frank, call the vote, please.
Baldwin Sands.
Yes.
Burrs.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
Noble.
Yes.
Trousseau.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Carried. Thanks, Ryan.
Pleasure to be of service.
Take care.
Thank you. Good report.
Okay, move down to minutes. Recommendation minutes for August 16th, 2023 Port Authority meeting being approved. Is there any errors or questions? No errors or mentions, okay, move second, Todd. All in favor, oh, sorry.
Baldwin Sands.
Yes.
Burrs.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
Noble.
Yes.
Trousseau.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes,
And that motion passes.
thank you. Move down to matters arising, the first report from Mary Ann, the media report. Mary Ann, welcome.
Yeah,
Hello, so with September's arrival, we saw a lot of departures from our seasonal staff at Dalewood and Lake Whitaker. So I thought maybe today we could take a moment to just recognize the great seasonal staff that we had on board this summer. Audrey and Maya were both nominated and received our Ambassadors of the Year. And to the right on the slide is just kind of a collage of both Dalewood and Lake Whitaker staff that were with us this season. So
Thanks, Mary Ann. Any questions for Mary Ann? We'll move on to our next report, Project Rocky.
So it's been a busy month. There's lots been happening both in the campgrounds as well as the field season. The payments, we've kind of gone through the camping season and already gearing up for the 2024 season. So seasonal campers have submitted their intents to camp for 2024, and we've begun to process those. Staff have attended some virtual training, and we're beginning planning for the Carolinian Forest Festival in October 2nd to 5th. And TD Tree Days planting is coming up October 14th, and we're preparing to close the campgrounds on September 30th. And staff will be participating in a lunch and learn during the week of September 30th in recognition of Truth and Reconciliation Week, and it's presented by the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Any questions for Elizabeth on her report? Seeing you, move down to watershed conditions and Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick update for the last month. We had a couple of rain events pass through the area, which didn't really amount to too much, but the water levels did go up. And then we just finished a bunch of field work this month, in particular. Fish surveying for the 2023 drain classification project, which we've been working on the last couple of years. We had a new fish for the watershed, and it was pretty exciting. Bowfin, which is a almost like a fossil roundnet type fish. They have like 20 plates, not a lot of scales. Pretty weird looking, big teeth. Very interesting fish for the watershed.
Thanks, Jen. Any questions for Jen? Frank, go ahead.
So is this fish part of the network? How does that
It's a native fish for southern Ontario. It with some kind of slower moving systems. It's uncommon, but it is native to our fisheries. We just haven't seen one.
It's an ugly fish.
And apparently they taste terrible. It tastes like, I guess, the very jelly-like consistency, not something that you would want to eat.
Go ahead,
Just through the chair, was it found in one of the creeks, or is it found in one of the?
Yeah, it was found in Beaver Creek.
Okay.
There's nothing further. We'll move down to Jeff and Brandon's report on forestry and invasive species. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. It's another time to get a little bit of update on this tree planting season this past spring. We did manage to find homes for 43,000 tree seedlings, over 20 species of trees and shrubs were planted. And our tree planting program, another 4,100 trees for the Soul Community Program is a program in Malahide, south of St. Thomas in Central Elgin, that provides larger seedling stock landowners for over-the-counter purchases of smaller numbers of trees. We did organize a few community tree planting events this past spring, including 200 larger stock trees that were planted at Lake Margaret, and 2,100 seedling trees that were planted by various groups at different locations in the watershed, including a couple groups that planted out in Buckfield here. The Green Party participated in community green tree planting, Fanshawe College and Central Elgin High School students. This year something new And I don't say the city of St. Thomas staff are hoping to an annual thing, but we secured 160, actually 161 potted trees for them to do a giveaway in spring. That's very popular, successful event. We also did a project specific for municipality of Central Elgin to even finish off an erosion control for an erosion repair that they did when planting some larger stock trees, property and units. As you will recall, we're planting a delivery agent for Forests Ontario. Through the 50 million tree program, we planted over 13,000 trees and received over $32,000 in funding from landlord. We planted. We also received another just shy of $7,000 in funding from them for our over-the-counter program and other KCCA tree planting sites. Yeah, I think going up on the pictures that I have up on the screen, the first one was just a couple of sites that we planted. If you go back a couple. That's the tree planting through this year, and there's one of our larger tractor plant sites. On the left and the one on the right is just a hand planting site. Next picture. Community involvement and sites at various locations in watershed. Moving forward to the invasive, just a summary of the season itself. As you will recall, May started off very wet. Led to some challenges for us as a month of May as a window for tree planting. You can see in my report, one of the sites that I hoped to plant very early on was large areas covered in sitting water that took quite a few weeks to actually dry up. So a lot of juggling at the beginning of the season, trying to find sites to plant trees on. Things did progressively get drier over the month of May to the point where near the end of May, conditions were nearly perfect for tree planting. Unfortunately, those drier conditions persisted through most of June to the beginning of July. I don't want to use that borderline drought by the end of June and cause some challenges for our seedlings, so that to the point that mortality and post-plant assessments was a little higher than we would normally see that time of year. But heavy rains and consistent rains over the month of July and August, those mortality rates seem to have very much plateaued. We will be going out and conducting our year one survival assessments later this month. So if there's any that survival wasn't good, we'll look into finding funding to replan and make sure those numbers are high for it. Moving into an invasive species summary, we were successful at getting money through the funding through the Great Lakes Action Fund for doing work at Lake Margaret and Independent World Park in the city of St. Thomas. We had a lot of volunteers from St. Thomas Rotary Club and our environmental youth corps go out and manually cut primarily on olive here in Buckthorn on the north shore of Lake Margaret, as you can see from the before and after photo. Just the amount of invasive vegetation that had taken over the entire understory in that area of the pictures. Following removal, Brandon and I went out and treated those stumps so they wouldn't regrow, because typically olive regrows aggressively when it's just cut. So that rapid regrowth, that we did have volunteers go in and replant shrubs in that areas. As part of these funding proposals, KC staff also treated invasive Japanese knotweed within Pinnacle Park. There's some small pockets of Japanese knotweed in Pinnacle Park. We just wanted to get it under control. It's a bigger issue, so because it's a pretty aggressive invader. In addition, KCCA Environmental Youth Corps also manually pulled garlic mustard along the main path in the park. Margaret, you can see the picture on the right, just all the little green plants in the background on the right with the little white flowers on it. It's all garlic mustards. All in all, the Environmental Youth Corps pulled over 7 large garbage bags of garlic mustard. Put the garlic mustard in black garbage bags so that they kind of sit in the sun and allow that to plants to rot before they get disposed of in the garbage. So that any seeds that could be in them become unviable. In addition, we did undertake some Phragmites control on private landowners' properties this past year and late last year, and did some work on our own properties as well, like Whitaker, Dalewood, and here at the authority through funding teams through the invasive Phragmites control fund. In my report, the one picture shows areas where areas of Dalewood conservation area was sprayed for Phragmites. Quite a few acres, 16 acres was treated. Weather conditions allowed this past winter, we did go down and cut large areas of Phragmites there. You can see the 4.5 pictures in my report. This is what it did to the landscape areas. We'll be going down to leave a lot of these areas for regrowth. And on those individual properties, landowners' properties, just to kind of keep at it, because treating Phragmites isn't a one and done type of scenarios. We continue to undertake control activities, reduce spotted knapweed on our property. It's on the Noctis meatless spotted knapweed. It's a pink flower. It's pretty common at this time of year. And it will take over meadow areas and become pretty much monoculture in those meadow areas. Goal there is just to reduce seed production every year so that eventually there's nothing in the seed bank. So it's not something that it can just, again, it's not a one and done type of treatment or management activity. So invasive species control efforts have also been initiated at Kirk Cousins Management Area as a result of funding received through the Invasive Species Action Fund. Targeted species include autumn European and glossy buckthorn and spotted knapweed. Funding through this program will allow us to treat those invasive species immediately north and to the west of the parking lot, if you're familiar with Kirk Cousins, and develop a plan with other areas. Up on the screen, you see just the buckthorn control here at the office, and that's actually a picture that's outside our boardroom here of the birch tree. To the back behind me here. You can see in that picture in 2019, you can hardly even see the birch tree. We went out and treated all of the stems of buckthorn to the point where all buckthorn is completely gone. You can see in that June 2023 photo the regrowth just from seed alone. So we went out and removed those, and that picture I just took a couple of days ago, the one on the right with the buckthorn gone. It's just something that I'll keep on because there's a seed bank there, but they're just going to keep growing. Happy to answer any questions. Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you very much for your report. In regards to the tree giveaway that you did in the city of St. Thomas, you didn't give yourself enough accolades because out of the 160 trees I went within the first hour and they were gone. And they were lined up before 8:30 in the morning and they were gone before 10:30. So it was my recommendation to Parks Department, to Mr. Bray, that you look at expanding that next year if there is the capacity to do so, because within half an hour, everything was gone. That is incredible. And you know that there is that level of interest in the community. So thank you very much for that project and all of the others.
I was impressed to see the youth corps pulling the ground cluster. That's hard. That's hard to back. You're better over for hours.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, good for that. Okay, if there's nothing else for Jeff, my recommendation of matters arising A through D be received. Todd?
Baldwin Sands.
Yes.
Spurs.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
Noble.
Yes.
Trousseau.
Yes,
Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Thank you. Move down to correspondence. We have two piece of information, one from Conservation Ontario, the Ministry of Natural Resources. Anything to highlight there?
No, those are just parted for information.
Bob Flanders, featuring Dan Stage Acts.
Could we just have a motion to receive?
Yep. Motion received, Todd, seconder, Sharon, do you want to get in on some?
Sure.
Baldwin Sands.
Yes.
Burrs.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
Noble.
Yes.
Trousseau.
Yes,
Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
We have no statements of revenue and expense, so. New business, we've already dealt with, item A. So next is a portion agreement update. Elizabeth.
So we just wanted to, it is at that time of year, we have to submit another progress report to the province on our abilities to deliver on the CAF deliverables. So that quarterly report was included in your package, but it mainly focused on our progress in terms of getting the apportionment agreements signed. So in the report, you can see that we've started doing municipal presentations on these apportioning agreements, and we've got successful signed agreements now with Middlesex Centre, Thames Centre, Malahide, and Southwold. I'll be attending the Central Elgin Council meeting on this Monday, so hopefully for a favorable response as well. St. Thomas's report, I understand, is going in early October, and the City of London is aiming to have it theirs in now towards the end of October, I believe it is. So there are definitely some outstanding municipalities in terms of working through this. October 1st is our deadline to submit to the province if we believe that we need an extension on that January 1st, 2024 deadline. It's my proposal to the board that we submit a precautionary request for extension to the province, which is with having 3 of our more major municipalities still outstanding would give us some breathing room to know that we would have an extension. What I'm suggesting is to March 31st of 2024, just to make sure that we give those last municipalities time to work through their own processes and their own councils. So, and then staff have been working on some other deliverables and hope to have the land inventory complete in the near future as well. So the motion that I have for you today is that the October 1st, 2023 progress report be received, and further that staff be directed to request an extension to the January 1st, 2024 deadline to execute those cost apportionment agreements with all our member municipalities.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Any questions for Elizabeth on the report? Be a mover and a seconder, Lori and Frank.
Baldwin Sands.
Yes.
Burrs.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
Noble.
Yes.
Trousseau.
yes,
Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Okay, next report, Kelly Creek Clean Water Initiative, Betsy's here. Welcome, Betsy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one project for your consideration today. It's another wetland creation project in the watershed that we hope to have completed this year still. So this project is actually just on the far west boundary of St. Thomas, so both immediately adjacent to it. And it's a farm that has seasonally wet areas within the field. So they are looking to enhance their property through the creation of 2 wetland cells. And as you can see, it's adjacent to an existing woodlot that actually has provincially significant wetland features within it. So this is an ideal area for wetland creation. The total cost of the project is estimated at $24,325. So the request today would be $3,000 from the Kelly Creek Water Initiative. Ducks Unlimited has confirmed funding as well as the Elgin Clean Water Program. And we've also submitted an application to the Elgin Stewardship Council to support this project as well. The hope would be to have it completed this fall, with some, tree planting to create a buffer, between wetlands and the existing agricultural field, next spring. So if board members are in agreement of this project, I would be looking for a motion today that project 2304 be awarded a grant of $3,000 from Kettle Creek Clean Water.
Thanks, Betsy. Any questions regarding this? I recognize the property, I drive by it all the time. So, recommendation to grant $3,000, mover and seconder, please. Thanks. Sam, do you want to get involved?
Yes, I'll move that.
Oh, he's on record.
Alderman Sands,
Yes.
Burrs,
Yes.
McMillan,
yes,
Noble.
Yes.
Trousseau
Yes,
and Jones.
Yes,
And that motion passes.
thanks, Betsy. Next, city London budget.
This is the next step in the City of London's budgeting process, and I just wanted to get it in front of the members so you're aware of the process that we go through with them. So you remember last time it was basically the budget numbers and the legislative change case. This is more of just how we fit into their strategic priorities and what we're doing that support that. The draft was due September 15th, and I submitted it to meet that deadline with the caveat that would be brought before you at today's meeting. As with all the processes within the City of London, we can make small tweaks to this every year as it comes towards council. But this draft will go towards council with the 24 to 2027 timeline. It builds upon KCCA's August submission and outlines how KCCA is helping to address the City of London strategic plan. And if you note from the document, we were asked to identify ways that we're meeting their environmental objectives, their social, economic, and as well as their equity and governance consideration. And it also made a list of how KCCA anticipates over the next 4-year period that we would have certain risks and challenges, and those risks and challenges have already been identified to you, including salary, inflation, getting the CA Act deliverables completed on time.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Any questions or concerns? Seeing any questions? So the recommendation is that the City of London business case be submitted as presented. Need a mover and seconder, please. Lori? Seconder, please. Todd?
I will second.
Okay, we'll get Sharon in there.
Okay. Baldwin Sands,
Yes.
Burrs,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes,
Noble,
Yes.
Trousseau,
yes,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
The report from Elizabeth and Joe regarding her cousin management area.
good dear.
I'll start this and then Joe can add input. Kirk Cousins Management Area is a collaboration that we have with Forest Entertainment as well as ourselves for property that's immediately behind Regina Monday High School on your way into London. There's a small parking area there as well as a trail through those joint pieces of property. Traditionally, it has been an area that basically I would say needs a facelift. So the parking lot, as you can see on the screen here, it's potted with some potholes. There's a declining kind of barrier around it, and then there's a berm immediately behind that barrier. It makes the area seem very uninviting, and there isn't a very effective trailhead sign there as well. So staff did go out earlier this year and we were successful in getting some funding from its Roots Foundation. That's where we received, I think it was $5,000 from them. And then we went out and took a look at how do we want to re-envision this parking area. And Joe basically came up with the idea of reducing the area of the parking lot. Doesn't reduce, it still is consistent with some of our other parking areas, and that has 22 sites. And by reducing that parking spot, it basically opened up the opportunity to have more of a nice sitting area and kind of like more of a picnic spot there as well. And so through this process, we would basically remove this is the existing kind of border, and then there's a berm area here. And so the idea is to remove the berm area, landscape this with some of the spoils of this over here, and then add basically 2 resting areas. And as you heard from Jeff's report earlier, staff were also able to get some funding to undertake some invasive species control on the property as well. So there's basically 2 target areas. The first target area is immediately around the parking lot, and that will be some vegetative clearing that will happen and reintroducing basically a meadow or tall grass prairie in and around there. And then the target area 2 is immediately south of the woodlot, where some more selective invasive species removal will occur. And it will come down around the side here, where there'd be individual species of invasive species removed in that area. So the funding basically is in place to do that. And we had set aside $5,000 in the capital budget as well to undertake a project up on the site. There's some remaining elements that will wait for other funding proposals to come in, but staff would like to get start working on the parking lot rejuvenation and some of the invasive species removal this fall. And so we are requesting through the report that we would be closing the Kirk Cousins Management Area beginning October 1st until the beginning of next season, to allow staff to be able to undertake this work without impacting the public's use of the property.
Questions for Elizabeth? It's a well-used trail. I really don't pay attention to this when I drive by.
It's common for bird watching. It is used. I think what we see a lot of people sit in the parking lot and eat lunch. That's why we thought of creating more of an area to kind of promote that type of use. Yeah, and ultimately, I think it just brings the property to a standard that's consistent with our other properties for a limited budget, basically.
Ask who's Kirk Cousins? Obviously, the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings.
I don't think it's affiliated.
Yeah, okay, move on.
What kind of invasive species are you dealing with?
Yeah, it's in that area immediately north of the parking lot, it's really dense European buckthorn and autumn olive. And in areas where they haven't kind of taken over, all the grassy four-legged species is invasive spotted knapweed. And
Much
then,
everything.
yeah, pretty much, yeah. And then once you get in further north into the actual forest area of Kirk Cousins, the whole other story is glossy buckthorn, which is the different ones.
Go ahead.
I have gone to that several times, and I would very much appreciate it being cleaned up. I also note that people no garbage, because there's no garbage containers in the parking lot. So is that something that is going to be considered?
Yeah, we do have a stock of higher end waste container from another project that we do intend to put out there.
Thank
We do have it out there during parts of the year, but we do remove it during the off season.
Oh, just one more.
Go ahead.
You said that a lot of birders use that. Is it going to be during the time where most of the birds have left? Just if people are going to be bird watching and you want to close it in October, it's usually a high time of bird watching for some species.
Probably at the tail end of migration.
Our plan through the chair to Laurie, our plan is to close it as of October 1st and reopen it for the spring season. But we have a communications plan, and we'll be sharing that with the major groups that use the area. But I'm hoping that the sentiment will be the same as you, is that this upgrade will be welcomed by those user groups.
Thank you.
Hard to spot birds and buckthorn. I'd be able to hear them, check to see them. Anyway, we have a recommendation.
I'm sorry, I'll read it out. I think we missed it from the PowerPoint, that the board approved the Kirk Cousins Management Area improvements as presented.
Lori? Secretary Todd?
Baldwin Sands,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Noble,
Yes.
Trousseau,
yes,
and Jones,
Yes.
and that passes.
Okay, we'll go down to our last report, Joe, activity report for September.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking for receipt of the planning activity report that was in the advanced package.
Questions, Joe's report? So none, so with the recommendations on the screen, you will back. Frank? Todd?
Baldwin Sands.
Yes.
Burrs.
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Noble.
Yes.
Trousseau,
yes,
and Jones,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
that brings us down to closed session.
Just before we break for the open session, I'd just like to remind members that this Friday is our board tour. Please try to arrive at 8:30 or closely thereafter. The bus, we would like to really leave the office right at 9 o'clock. You should dress for the weather because you will be outside periodically. Comfortable footwear. We are asking that you walk a short portion of one of the trails, and that way you wear your KCCA shirt that was provided to you if possible, so that we can grab some shots of the board as a group. Bring a water bottle and or a travel mug, as we'll have coffee and water that you can fill your bottle.
So where do we get a shirt?
I don't think I have.
No,
I have one.
I talked to Marianne and I thought everyone got
There was a
a polo shirt.
They were passed around, but I believe it was when Grant was away.
It wasn't here.
All right, I'll follow up with Marianne, and make sure that shirts are distributed.
You want me to see if she has them downstairs?
She's coming up anyways.
Oh.
Hey, we're into a cashier. That's
So, look.
And thank you for the 9 AM or the planning on being.
Okay, motion to go on close. So, property acquisition and security of property. Lori, Todd?
Baldwin Sands.
Yes.
Burrs.
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Noble,
Yes.
Trousseau,
yes.
and Jones,
Yes.
and that motion passes. Give me a minute to stop.